All right, we're going to get started. Hello everyone. Welcome to the January edition of our science communication webinar. As usual, we are going to ask that you keep your cameras off and your mics muted. And as you have questions, please drop those in the chat and we will have an opportunity to get to those answered at the end of the presentation. Today we have our North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission GIS analyst John Levette and Anna Stefanowicz, who will be discussing how we can leverage our agency mission with graphic information systems. And so I'll turn it over to John and Anna.
Good morning and welcome all who tuned in and for your interest and time in listening to what John and we've been doing for the past 4 years. We are very happy to have this opportunity to talk about GIS and its tools and how they are used across the agency in support of its mission. So the plan for today's talk is to go over the principles of what GIS is and also briefly mention about the history of GIS in our agency. Then John and I will switch several times and talk about examples of GIS work we've done in the past few years. And John will conclude with talking about access to different GIS resources and partnership with organizations outside of our agency. So what is geographic information systems? The principle of GIS is layering different data types that share the same location. As you see on the image on the right, a real world is being constructed through layering different layers on top of each other, and the linking and visualization of this data on the map provides the foundation for mapping, which can help to ask questions where things happen. The data that is related in between these different layers can be analyzed and to help to ask questions why things happen where they do. Further analysis can even allow to predict or build models with questions, what if something happens and what kind of results we can get. So this provides location intelligence that is used in science and almost every industry. So here is to illustrate the GIS principles and application in a real world agency-specific project. A few years ago, a request came to identify grouse road survey points with very specific location requirements, such as elevation, location on the road, but not on game land, with also specific distance from water and forest. So by layering these different data representing each requirement, like elevation, stream, road network, game land boundaries, and land cover, project boundaries, and analyzing and linking these different layers all together, the points could be generated and were generated and shared with biologists to conduct the survey. So the most common GIS tools used in order to layer those data and analyze are from company called Esri or ESRI. These are the tools used by us and our agency staff. They come in two different groups. The desktop applications, there are currently two types of them. ArcMap is an older generation application, and ArcGIS Pro, which is a new and more integrated with ArcGIS Online application. The ArcGIS Online is a web-based mapping software platform with dozens of task-specific apps. These are accessible through mobile devices and allow data collection and updates in the field. The data and its updates can be instantly shared online with specific groups of people or the public. Because of its versatility, many GIS tasks can be solely done on this platform without having to use the desktop applications. With many WRC staff in the field, this platform becomes quickly popular and gains a wider application in our agency's programs. The framed applications represent the most used ones in our agency, and we will talk about them more in detail in project examples. A very short, brief story of GIS at our agency. Late 1990s, wildlife biologists started using GIS for projects such as identifying focal areas for cure program, mapping density of game species, producing game land maps. In 2007, a GIS position was opened in engineering division, which later was moved to a newly created land and water access division. And 4 years ago, another position was added to the same division due to the growth of GIS application in our agency. Now there is a team of two of us, John and I, providing wildlife agency-wide support in GIS applications and solutions. Currently, we have over 170 staff using GIS desktop applications and 60 plus staff using only mobile application solutions. So looking back at our agency mission statement on the right, we highlighted key elements, and on the left, we listed related GIS projects that John and I have been working on in the past 4 years. As you see, there is a wide range of conservation projects and sharing information about wildlife health, public access to recreation, and related to its safety measures. These programs and opportunities would not be possible without the infrastructure and land the agency maintains. Therefore, this is also listed here as a separate subgroup and with specific projects related to that. Now we will dive into specific projects. I'll switch to John, who will start by telling you how GIS is used in forestry-related programs. John?
Thanks, Anna. So I'll start kind of going through some of the project highlights by talking about some of the work in our forestry division. This is something I spend a lot of my time on. And as you all are aware, I'm sure we manage, or there's about over 2 million acres enrolled in the game land program across the state, and about 650,000 of those acres are under WRC stewardship, meaning we're kind of responsible for the maintenance on those lands. And of that area, about 30% of that is in managed timber stands. What that means is areas where we are tracking the health of the forest, the growth of the forest, and may take into action timber treatments like thinning or clear cutting. This data, as far as the GIS goes, manifests in about almost 10,000 timber stands that are mapped across the state, inside of which we have over almost 27,000 plots at which our foresters go out and will measure trees, and we have data on over 190,000 trees across the state. And so this is kind of just a breakdown from the state level, where you can see the distribution of where all of these timber stands are across the state, and then the just an outline of the Jordan Lake game land, and a little zoomed in area where you can kind of see the breakdown of those timber stands as the polygons, and the plots as the points there, and then the trees are within those plots. Where this really comes into play is with an overarching forest inventory program. The cycle here is that our foresters can go out into the field with a mobile device, with a tablet, and do a timber cruise, can measure trees and update that information onto their tablet, which then when they are back into cell service or connected to Wi-Fi is updated immediately into a centralized data storage system that keeps track of all of those stands, plots, and trees, spatial data across the state. And then some of our forestry managers can then take that data and do some long-term planning. This is work that's largely been driven by Casey Phillips to try to find how we can maximize revenue from timber management while also maintaining the highest habitat quality for species of interest within each game land or timber stand. Because we have all of these data now stored in a centralized database, the spatial data, we can do some really interesting and exciting things with tracking this information, like with our timber sales. We've developed a dashboard that our forestry staff and upper level management can keep track of timber revenues. In this example for the Northeast Piedmont, we can track receipts that are coming in from timber sales. When this screenshot was taken here, there are 4 active timber sales in the Northeast Piedmont and over $400,000 of revenue from the current fiscal year. And we can use this kind of information for long-term planning and just to keep track of projects as they go. We're also, I'm missing a slide there, but that's okay. So going back to some of the really cool work that Casey Phillips has done is with our strategic forest planning. And we all started asking the question, how can we manage WRC game lands and timber resources to maximize both cash flow and habitat quality over a much longer time scale, and considering operational constraints like staffing and just ability to get out and actually conduct clear cuts or any sort of timber management. So this is the R. Wayne Bailey Caswell game land habitat in 2022 as it relates to open forest species that prefer open forest habitats. And a lot of this was developed around the conversations that we've had around developing a small game focused game land. So as you can see, based on the model that Casey developed, habitats were separated into marginal, good, and best habitat quality, kind of the current level in 2022. And you can see the breakdown there. The scaling from gray is marginal to dark green is best habitat under the current condition. Using all of these data that we've collected over time on the forest at Caswell and on the trees there, and using the model that was developed. Okay. We can develop a harvest prescription for those individual stands, whether we should thin them, whether we should do a clear cut, in order to, as I mentioned, both maximize the habitat quality for the species of interest and also maximize the revenue that can be generated. So this is a harvest prescription for 2022 to 2039 for about a 20-year period. And if we are able to meet this goal, these harvest prescriptions under our operational constraints, we can achieve a habitat in 2040 that looks like this, where we are shifting to much more of the game land in good and best quality habitat for these open forest species. And when you compare the 2022 to 2040, we've treated almost 12,000 acres of forest over that 20-year period, and increased the forest habitat quality by 52% of acres in that good and best condition. So all of this is facilitated by the fact that we have developed all of these data sets in a way that they are centralized. We have really good spatial data about the trees within these individual stands and within the game lands, and are therefore able to develop these really good geographic models for forest growth and forest health to build some really interesting analyses for our forest inventory and management tools. Another question and request that we get a lot is about public data collection. There's a regular need for simple form-based data collection tools that are open to the public. And using some of our GIS tools, specifically a tool called Survey123, we're able to develop these applications with a quick turnaround time and store the data in ArcGIS Online, which is in the cloud online, which is accessible to anybody who has login information on our online GIS portal, and can then be used to develop web maps, applications, any sort of analysis or data dissemination tools like that. I'm going to go through a couple projects that we've had on that front in the past few years. The Terrapin Tally project is one that came from Hope Sutton and Sarah Finn, and transferred over actually from DEQ. We took responsibility for this project a couple of years ago, and is used as a public survey to track diamondback terrapin sightings on North Carolina's coast. So every year we work with, I use we liberally here, Hope and Sarah and some of our other staff, work with interested members of the public to do surveys along these routes, like this one you see outlined here in yellow, to do paddle routes and go out and map a variety of things, including diamondback terrapin sightings. And when they're doing those paddle routes, they're using their cell phones and a Survey123 form application, like you see on the left here, to map all sorts of points of interest along these paddle routes, and then we are able to kind of track health of the ecosystem and diamondback terrapin occurrence on a yearly basis and across space up and down the coast. There were over 600 survey submissions in 2023, and I think there's a lot of growth potential with this application. I know I've had conversations with Hope and Sarah about ways that we can kind of tie this in with larger efforts with other state agencies, up and down the East Coast tracking diamondback terrapin. Another survey application that kind of came up pretty quickly in the fall was related to aquatic nuisance species. Our AWD division and Rachel Hope reached out to me when we had some reports of apple snails and zebra mussels across the state, and really needed to turn around quickly to be able to solicit public input for when folks feel like they've seen one of these aquatic nuisance species. So like I said, we needed a simple application for the public to report sightings of these species and for staff to review and address the problems. So what we put together was a public survey with a bunch of example photos of aquatic nuisance species that were of interest to the agency, and asked the public to select the location on the map where they were reporting a sighting, and then we strongly suggested that they submit photos with their sighting submission. And then on top of that, because those data were then stored online, we put together what you see on the left here, which is a report verification tool for our staff. And when a new survey is submitted, an email is sent to a handful of WRC employees, and they can go in and take a look at the report and see if what the public is reporting is actually what they're saying it is. In this case, I think this snail that you see the picture of was reported as an apple snail. And if I'm correct. I believe it's a mystery snail. So then our staff can mark, actually it's this, and address the sighting accordingly. With some things, like zebra mussels, as I'm sure many of you are aware, if there's a sighting of that, we need to get out very quickly and respond. And so being able to get this information from the public quickly and respond to it quickly was really facilitated by having these useful GIS tools. And this is live now and will be useful moving forward as hopefully the public continues to make us aware of any nuisance species that they do run into. Shifting gears a little bit, I just wanted to highlight another interesting project, and specifically a data set that we use a lot. Jake Rash reached out to us, this was probably a couple years ago now, with an interest in inventorying parcels along our public mountain trout waters and filtering them by size and ownership status so that we could assess access and conservation needs in Western North Carolina. And we use the data set that is somewhat unique to North Carolina. North Carolina has developed a really good parcel data set for the whole state. So over 5.5 million land records for North Carolina, showing ownership status, size, and a bunch of other information, which is updated ideally quarterly, but some counties don't quite update it that often. Regardless, we can use this data set to do some analysis on, like, as Anna mentioned earlier, we took the public mountain trout water stream layer here and then pulled out the parcels that are adjacent to those streams, and then we're able to filter it by size and by ownership status to give Jake and his team a lot more information about what's going on along our trout waters, and hopefully highlight areas where we can look into better acquisitions or developing access priorities as we kind of move forward with conservation needs. So I'm going to hand it back over to Anna to talk about a couple projects that she's been working on recently.
Okay, thank you, John. Trying to turn on my camera, which might not get to that control. I guess we can proceed without my camera on. All right, so I'm going to talk about CWD surveillance. With the detection of CWD in March of 2022, we used ArcGIS Online platform to map surveillance areas and attach associated regulations, and also create layers of locations for our surveyed health corporators and testing drop-off stations. These were now incorporated into an interactive application that is embedded on our website, and the public can easily access this information to determine where those surveillance areas are. And by clicking on them, they can see what the regulations are. And also the application has built-in filters and driving direction to help them to find specific locations in their areas. Another example we have of GIS application is for Abandoned and Derelict Vessel Program. In 2020, our agency received funding and authority to inspect, investigate, and remove abandoned and derelict vessels associated with hurricane storms. To facilitate this process, an ArcGIS Online platform, again, was used to create an online ADV layer, and that law enforcement staff, which is tasked with ADV mitigation, can access through a field map application on their mobile phones. This app allows them to enter and update ADV information. Then customized GIS tools generate a sticker ID that goes on an identified ADV. And other tools automatically notify the manager of the new ADV and its status change. At the same time, the progress of the ADV mitigation is shared with the public through an interactive app on our website. The app allows users to not just view the current status, but also filter identified ADVs by a sticker ID, registration, a whole ID. A significant change took place in tracking navigational markers or buoys few years ago. Before GIS, maintenance crews in field sent dozens of spreadsheet reports to a GIS analyst, and these reports had to be compiled into one statewide standardized database. Then the data had to be mapped or geocoded as the GIS lingo is, and then if there were any corrections to the data needed to be remapped. Then the mapped data or copies of the mapped data were shared with staff and public. So this process or parts of this process had to be repeated every time a new report was submitted on the update needed. This process was slow, intensive in terms of data entry and updates. It was decentralized and non-standardized. Crews were collecting data in various formats. And with the move to ArcGIS Online platform, one copy of map data is published as a web feature service. Then the maintenance crews use Field Maps application or a web browser to add and update data. Those updates are immediately available online to staff and public. And also the same data can be integrated in other ArcGIS Online application. This route doesn't need to be repeated once it is all set up, the process is working automatically, making the changes instant, centralized, and standardized. So this is an example how these two different systems looked like. On the left, you see a spreadsheet that was filled in by field staff and then sent to the Raleigh office. And on the right, you see how now the same staff can open an application on their mobile device and interact with the buoy data. And by clicking on each location, they can view its status, they can change the information, they can add new locations of buoys, and additionally to the buoy data, they can also see related layers such as boating access areas and no-wake zones to create a better picture of the infrastructure that is maintained by our staff in the field. So the benefits are multitude to use while using ArcGIS Online platform. It creates a more accurate inventory and tracking of our facilities. The data collection updates can happen directly from field and are instantaneous. The layers can be integrated with other ones online, such as the one below showing a boating access area application, where besides boating access areas, those no-wake buoys and danger buoys and other waterway markers are also shown along with no-wake zones. This creates a more complete picture of public access to wildlife associated recreation. The similar process took place about a year ago for fish attractors. Now, inland fishery staff has a layer of fish attractors on ArcGIS Online that they can access through Field Maps mobile application, where they can update this information in field. The same layer is integrated now into our existing publicly facing interactive apps. The one in the middle shows a snapshot of fish attractors, where you can zoom in and click on each location and read more detailed information about a fish attractor. Fish attractors are also part of the other application, Fishing Areas and Trout Waters. By searching public fishing opportunities, the public can also see where fish attractors are located. Again, providing them a better information how they can enjoy outdoors through the programs that we maintain and provide to the public. So as we start to collect more accurate and up-to-date information on managed facilities and land by our agency, another online tool, Dashboards, becomes very useful in visualizing and sharing information. Like maps and apps shown to you, dashboards are single-page, interactive data visualizations, helping to make decisions, monitor status, and inform the public. Here are two examples of dashboards from our website. In the top corner, right corner, the prescribed fires dashboards allows the public to see near real-time data related to Commission's prescribed fires. Those activities are entered by field crews and shared with the public through ArcGIS Online platform. The fires can be viewed by status, date, and location, and by the public. And this process eliminates the need to send widespread emails or other types of notification. In the lower right corner, Managed Lands and Facilities dashboards shows locations and of facilities, water access areas, shooting ranges, boating safety, regulated areas, buoys, maintained conservation, and game lands. Each item can be explored in detail by drop-down lists, switch to different tabs or table views, and the map is inside this dashboard is interactive, and it allows to zoom in, to select features, identified features, turn on and off legend and map layers, and change base map. This interactivity is very helpful to provide a better picture of the status of either ongoing or recently happened fires or maintained land and facilities. And with that, I'll switch back to John where he will talk about projects that are in development.
Thanks, Anna. So yeah, as you can see from the, specifically this Managed Lands and Facilities dashboard on the lower left here, we've kind of moved in a direction where we can keep track of and visualize a lot more of the infrastructure that we maintain as an agency, and answer questions for ourselves, like reporting questions: how many public fishing areas or boating access areas do we maintain, or how many acres of game land? But we can also share that data with the public. And as we developed these kind of, this kind of dashboard, and building off of some of the good work that came through with the waterway markers and fishing attractor applications. One of the specific projects that Anna and I and some of our small group have discussed recently and have kind of been moving with is this idea of better infrastructure inventory and monitoring. As I said, building off of the success of the buoy and fish attractor applications. And there's just a ton of other infrastructure that we as an agency maintain. Things like gates, kiosks, parking areas, any of that data, some of which we have in maps, but it was developed for maps on PDF maps that are static. It's information that we want to be able to share better with the public, and specifically with the idea of tracking access gate information, rather than field staff opening or closing a gate for any reason and having to relay that information to the two of us here in Raleigh and then us updating online maps. We can create the same kind of mobile applications that our field staff can then quickly open and just change one status field for that feature, for that gate. And then because it's linked with an online database and then linked with a public facing map, the public will then immediately be able to see what's going on with that feature, with that gate, anything of that sort. So yeah, it really improves our ability to communicate with the public regarding Wildlife Resources Commission assets. Another project that we've been working on recently is a better land acquisition planning application. A lot of the land acquisition work is handled by Ben Solomon and in our Land and Water Access Division, but obviously there are acquisition priorities that come up all across the agency for different reasons. So we wanted to improve the interagency collaboration on acquisition priorities and facilitate better long-term planning, long-term tracking and reporting of these acquisition projects. So again, we can use that parcel data set that I mentioned before in this application that you see on the right here. And I've shared this with a couple different groups at smaller regional meetings over the past few months. But this has just been an effort to give staff more agency and ability to contribute these kind of priorities to our acquisition program. Staff can go in and select one of these parcels that maybe a private landowner has reached out and said, hey, we're interested. We might be interested in selling to the agency. And using this application, we can pull a bunch of really helpful information from the parcel data layer, and then information that is generated on our end, like contact information for the seller, or why this parcel might be of interest to the agency, whether it's for species of greatest conservation need or better access to a game land. And then the application itself has a supervisor review tab where our supervisors, division chiefs and whatnot can go in and check to make sure that we are tracking what we want to be tracking. And then finally, we have a final dashboard piece to this that allows some filtering and reporting of these acquisition priorities. So if Ben goes and has a meeting with a land trust, he can filter the data that's been shared by staff that's just related to that land trust specifically, say, for example, Three Rivers, and then have a better conversation with those folks about, what our priorities are that might be of interest to them as well. So those are just a couple of the projects that, we've been having conversations about, but new stuff pops up all the time, and we're kind of always open to conversations with you all about how we can potentially improve or help your work. We've mentioned a lot about our online applications and things like that. if you're not aware, on the NC Wildlife website, in the tiles that live on the homepage, there's a maps and access tile there that links directly to our interactive maps page. And that's where things like our public mountain trout waters, fishing areas, fish attractors, game land map, where those kind of maps live. Those are all totally public, and that's kind of our the landing page for those main map applications. But aside from that, that all is, a lot of that is data that lives in ArcGIS Online, which is a separate piece that we many folks have access to, and you can have access to as well if you would like. Stepping away from like the project piece specifically, we wanted to talk a little bit about like commonly requested data and access to data that doesn't just originate within WRC, but is just things that are useful to a lot of our projects. NC OneMap is the state's data repository. It's managed by the Center for Geographic Information and Analysis at the state level. And it has a lot of information like that parcel data, the high resolution imagery for the whole state that's flown every 4 years, elevation data for the state, address information, the North Carolina Next Gen 911 address information's on there. And each individual state agency contributes data to that portal, and it's a really valuable resource that we have as a state that not every other state has that same capability built up. So if I ever have someone come to me and they're looking for statewide data, that's always one of the first places I point them. If you're interested in stream data or that kind of blue line information, the National Hydrography data set is a really good national level layer at different resolutions that's got a ton of really good information about streams and stream location and stream order, and that kind of in that world. The National Land Cover data set is a really good asset for land cover, like what locations are urban or forested or cropland. And it works really well at like a regional scale. If you're interested in soil data, the Web Soil Survey from the USGS is a great place to go. And then the North Carolina Natural Heritage Program maintains a lot of really good information about conservation lands, managed areas, and a variety of different species information as well. And specifically with the NHP data, if you are interested in that, you can contact Anna or I to be added to we have a group set up with NHP to have access to a higher level of information than just general public access does. Excuse me. And finally, if you want access to ArcGIS Pro or ArcGIS Online or have interest in training opportunities, please feel free to reach out to Anna or me, and we can help you get set up with that. The licensing information has got a lot easier over the past few years. Outside of WRC, just wanted to share kind of a couple other things that in the GIS world. There are a variety of state government GIS user groups in which Anna and I are very much involved. The Esri, the organization that makes the software that we primarily use, hosts a huge user conference that's like 20,000 people every year, and we try to go to that every couple years or so. There's a really good North Carolina GIS community that has a conference every other year, as well as a couple other user groups that host conferences. And there's a really good Center for Geospatial Analytics at NC State that's got a great program and is always in search of projects for their professional master's program. I think, the 9th, if you have a bunch of data sitting around that you have an idea of what you want done with it, but don't have the time to do it, reach out to me or Anna today, and we can maybe get a proposal in to that master's program at NC State. I think they're due the 11th. So it's quick turnaround, but every semester they look for projects to essentially have their master's students serve as a consultant or like a project lead to take on that data and do an analysis for a client of sorts. So with that, we're happy to take any questions, any project requests discussing, data, general GIS assistance. We hope we kind of gave you a good rundown of the kind of stuff that we've been working on the past few years, and by no means is this exhaustive. And if we've done a project with you and left you out of this presentation, we certainly apologize for not sharing your good work. But we enjoy what we do and try to take on any and all areas where we can help in the agency. So thanks.
Thank you, John and Anna. For our listeners, if you have a question, go ahead and drop that in the chat. I think we already have some here in the chat. So Seth asks, is the best way to share GIS files still via geo database, or is there a newer, more collaborative way to work on map layers together with groups?
I can take that on. I think it depends a little bit on your your goals. With ArcGIS Online, you can what's called publish. You can publish data layers to ArcGIS Online, and then they become kind of live and collaborative. But it adds another step in there. And if it's just kind of like you want to send some data to someone else, and it doesn't matter if your updates, are live across between the two people, geodatabases or shapefiles are certainly still very much a part of what we do every day. But as we kind of shared with some of these large agency-wide projects in which lots of people have their hands on data and are keeping things updated, that's when having data shared online really, really becomes helpful.
Okay. Sarah Schweitzer asks, do you all work with those designing the Blueprint 2.0 and those who are doing climate modeling through CASC, Climate Adaptation Science Center?
I can take this
Okay.
question. We do not work closely with them. We have in the past met with them and talked about some overlapping data sets that could be beneficial for their analysis, but they basically do them on their own and reach out to us and other partners for periodical reviews, which we have participated in.
Okay. And Gabriella asks, for the proactive land acquisition planning work you're doing, have you considered including some kind of notification system for when high priority parcels are put up for sale on MLS, etc.?
No, but that's a really interesting idea. I'd have to look and see if there's a good way to get that information streamed from an MLS. I would like to think that if we have truly, high priority parcels, that we at least have our staff are really good about being in contact with landowners, especially in areas where the properties are of high interest to us. But obviously there are areas that we could identify as high priority and have no contact with the landowners there. So that would be a really interesting route to take in terms of trying to set up some sort of notification system with the MLS. So yeah, I'll look into that.
And I guess what I'll add, the purpose of this system is to allow you to go in and identify some of those tracks early on, so we can keep an eye on them. Next question is from Cindy, or comment, I guess I should say. She's asking for some help. I'm working with the CCAS staff to update the Wildlife Action Plan, Conservation Opportunity Areas spatial data. I'd like to work with you to evaluate how WRC managed lands fit into the picture. What's the best way to initiate a project?
I think we just reach out to us. We don't have any procedures that are required to contact us, and we're always available. Just a simple email, phone call, and we can start talking about this and see how we can approach the specific item or project you have in mind. There are no forms to fill in.
Yeah, we're both in the Land and Water Division in Raleigh, so we're just right across the hall from each other. I mean, Cindy, you know that, but for anyone else, you know, we're here and our doors are open if you ever want to come have a conversation. And for at least for the coastal land and water staff, if any of y'all are on the call, we will, both of us intend to be at the meeting tomorrow. So if you have any questions that you want to, or projects you want to talk about in person, we're happy to answer them today, but we're also going to be down in Newburgh tomorrow if you want to have any conversations.
And let me add to that. So both Anna and John do work in the Land and Water Access Division, of course. They're, like you said, they're here in Raleigh on the 3rd floor with us, but they are a statewide, you know, they're agency-wide GIS experts. And so if you have a project you need help with or want some of their expertise on and for them to help you work on and develop, that's what they're here for. They're not just for the LAWA division, they're for the agency. So feel free to come on by. So Jason asks, can the same people that have access to buoy data also have the access to the fish attractor data? It would be nice to update fish attractors as we are updating buoys.
Yes, that definitely can be done. We maybe just need to have a little bit more detailed conversation about very specific types of access and who needs this access. Yes, definitely. I have heard the same question or idea a while ago, and I would like to follow up with you, and also with inland fishery staff, just to make sure that both staff from both divisions are on the same page in terms of accessing the data and updating the data.